Come closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. The carpet wasn't supposed to bleed. Electra froze halfway down the stairs, her bare foot hovering just above the next step. A deep, rust-colored stain spread beneath the old shag rug, soaking into the fibers like something had been dragged. Something big, something that hadn't wanted to go quietly. The house was silent. No wind, no creaks, just the steady hum of the fridge and the sharp tick, tick, tick of the hallway clock. "Dad?" she called out. No answer. Her voice echoed off the drywall, bounced down the narrow hallway, and died in the open mouth of the basement door, left ajar. Again, she swallowed hard. Her throat felt tight. He hadn't come home from work until almost 3 a.m. the night before. She'd seen him from her bedroom window, shirtless, barefoot, skin slick with sweat, dragging a heavy trash bag toward the woods. He hadn't looked up at her. She was almost sure he wasn't breathing. Electra crept closer, one step at a time. Her fingers brushed the wall for balance. When she reached the rug, she knelt, pulled the edge back. Underneath, embedded into the hardwood floor, claw marks, deep, wild, furious. She gasped and stumbled backward, bumping into something behind her. It was her mother. Hair perfectly styled, pearls tight against her throat, a full apron, even though she hadn't cooked breakfast in weeks. "Sweetheart," her mother said calmly, her voice like syrup. "Your father had a rough night. Stress. You understand?" Electra looked up into her mother's eyes, too wide, too still. Her mother placed a firm hand on her shoulder and gave it a gentle squeeze that felt anything but. "Don't worry about the mess. I'll take care of it." And just like that, she turned and walked away, heels clicking on the blood-soaked rug like nothing was wrong. The bell above the door jingled like a broken music box as Electra stepped inside. The scent of cinnamon and mold hit her instantly. Trix called it comfort rot. Bear was already at their usual table, hoodie up, dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in a week. "Morning, sunshine," Electra said, dropping into the seat across from him. He looked up. "I think my mom's a monster." Electra blinked. "What?" Bear leaned in, voice low. "She made steak tartare for breakfast." Breakfast, Electra. She was eating it raw and smiling. But the worst part was her reflection. In the window, it was wrong. Like it was smiling before she did. A shiver trailed down Electra's spine. "You're not the only one," she said. Jet arrived next, silent as always, dressed in all black, earbuds jammed in like armor against the world. He didn't speak, just pulled out a small plastic bag from his coat pocket and dropped it onto the table. Inside it, a yellowed fang, still wet. "My sink," he whispered. "Found it there this morning. My mom said it was from a pork roast. I don't think she's cooked in years." Trix showed up next, her black glitter eyeliner smudged and her haunted expression framed in her spiderweb beanie. She looked around the table and said nothing, then reached into her bag and placed a curved claw beside the fang. Torben was last. His face was pale. He didn't even sit down. "There's something under my bed," he said. Bear stood up. "Like a monster or something?" Torben nodded slowly. "No, like my dad, and I think he was licking the carpet." Nobody wanted to be the first to say it. They sat in tense silence, watching their drinks grow cold and the coffee shop slowly empty. The sky outside had turned a pale, bruised pink again, glowing unnaturally through the windows like a wound that wouldn't close. It was Electra who finally said it. "I think something is happening to our parents." "And no one else in town notices?" Jet asked. "No one else in town talks about anything," Trix said. "When's the last time we saw the principal or the librarian?" "They're gone," Bear said quietly. "Just like that weird girl in homeroom. You remember her?" "What was her name?" Electra asked. No one knew. No one could remember her name. That night, Electra locked her bedroom door and pushed her dresser in front of it. She couldn't shake the way her mother's eyes glowed faintly in the hallway, or the smell that clung to her father's clothes when he returned from night walks. She tried to sleep, but then she heard it, scratching inside the walls. A sound like claws dragging down the inside of the plaster, and behind it her father's low voice, murmuring in a language that was not human. She clutched her flashlight tighter and whispered to herself, "I think my parents are monsters." And she wasn't alone. It was October 27th when the fog stopped leaving. It used to drift through Grimm's Hollow in the mornings like an old friend, clinging to the cracked sidewalks and wrapping itself around the wrought iron lampposts before vanishing by noon. But now, it stayed. By midday, the fog was thicker. It didn't roll anymore. It hovered, still, too still. The kind of still that made you feel like something was watching you from behind the veil, waiting for you to move first. Electra pressed her forehead against the cool window of Bear's bedroom and stared out into the haze. "It's like the town's rotting from the inside." Bear looked up from his desk, where he'd been scratching notes into a yellowed notebook. "You ever notice how no one's talking about it? Not the fog, not the moon, not the way everyone's eyes look. Off." "They don't blink anymore," Electra said quietly, "or if they do, it's not when they should." She turned to face him. "Bear, do you think we're being paranoid?" He didn't answer, because deep down, they both knew. Trix lived 2 houses down, where the lawn was covered in plastic skeletons and fake cobwebs no one had bothered to take down since last Halloween. But tonight, the cobwebs didn't look fake. "Okay, tell me I'm not the only one who smells that," Jet muttered, stepping onto her porch. The scent was faint, but unmistakable. Meat, rotting, sweet. Inside, Trix was pacing, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "My mom asked me to help her clean out the freezer," she whispered. "There were bones, guys, human-sized, covered in freezer burn. She said they were left over from a Halloween prank, but there was a wedding ring in the ice." Torben swore under his breath. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," Bear said. Trix looked up, her voice breaking. "Why us? Why are our families the only ones acting like—" "They're not," Electra cut in. Everyone turned to her. She nodded toward the street through the fogged-up living room window. The shape of a neighbor, Mr. Cleary, the mailman, stood motionless in the middle of the sidewalk, staring up at the sky, not moving, not blinking. Just grinning, as if waiting for something or someone. October 28th, the school library. The school smelled wrong, not like dust or books or that faint scent of sweat that clings to public spaces. It smelled metallic, like iron, like blood. They walked past the office, empty. The secretary's desk had a cup of cold coffee. The liquid inside congealed into a film of greenish scum. "Where is everyone?" Jet whispered. I haven't seen Mr. Halpern since last week, said Torben. Electra pulled open the door to the library. It creaked. Inside, the lights flickered, and at the center table was a notebook, old, bound in cracked leather, no title. Trix opened it slowly. There were pages missing, burned, ripped, stained, but the ones that remained told of a curse, a pact, a bloodline buried in shadow. The children will rise beneath the pink moon, unknowing until the year of turning. At 18, the flesh shall wake, the hunger shall pass from parent to child. Electra's hands trembled. No, she whispered, this can't be about us. But it was. Everything in that notebook was pointing directly at them. By the next morning, 3 students were gone, their lockers empty, names on attendance sheets erased. Even their photos had been scratched off yearbooks as if they never existed. The fog had grown denser. At night, the teens heard howling from the woods. But it wasn't animal. It was low, layered, like a human scream stretched into something monstrous. They didn't sleep anymore. When Bear looked in the mirror, he thought he saw his pupils shift, just for a second. Jet caught his father crawling across the kitchen ceiling at midnight. Trix saw her mother with her mouth unhinged, licking the glass of the bedroom window from outside. And Electra, she found her father curled in the bathtub, his spine arched backward, his eyes glowing faint pink. He hissed when she entered the room, voice warped, bones cracking. You'll understand soon, sweet girl. The friends gathered again at the coffee crypt that night. They didn't speak for a long time. Outside, the pink moon glowed like a scar, leaking light onto the pavement. Inside, the 5 of them stared at one another, realizing the awful truth as the puzzle clicked into place. This wasn't just happening to their parents. It was happening to them. It was October 30th when Torben's nose started bleeding black. He didn't notice at first. He just wiped it away with the sleeve of his hoodie. But when he glanced down, it wasn't blood. It was darker, thicker, like ink. They were all changing, but none of them were ready to say it out loud. The 5 friends sat in a tight circle beneath the low, creaking beams of Bear's attic. The rain outside hadn't stopped in hours, tapping against the slanted roof like skeletal fingers. A single lantern cast shadows against the walls, warping their faces. Bear held the letter with shaking hands. The parchment was brittle, the ink was faded, but the message burned. On the eve of your 18th year, your true face will rise beneath the moon. The blood that bore you will awaken. You will forget what it means to be human. Silence. Trix pulled her knees up to her chest. How did you even find this? Behind the insulation, Bear muttered. I was trying to see if the smell was coming from something dead in the wall. Turns out it was just the truth. Electra couldn't speak. Not yet. Her mouth felt dry, tongue thick with disbelief and fear. She could hear her heart in her ears, loud, unrelenting. What if they're turning us into them? Jet asked. No one answered, because they knew. They went around the circle. Bear's reflection blinked wrong. It closed its eyes before he did. Trix had grown a second row of tiny, sharp teeth. She discovered them brushing her tongue in the mirror. Torben was hearing whispers in the fog, calling his name, always his name. Jet hadn't eaten in 2 days. Food made him gag, but when he passed a roadkill opossum on the way home, his mouth watered. And Electra? Her eyes had started to glow, just faintly, when she was angry. But it wasn't just that. She had begun to hear her parents talking at night. whispering her name from behind her bedroom walls. "She's almost ready," her father would say. "One more night," her mother would coo. "One more night." "Guys." Electra finally spoke. Her voice was rough. "I think we're the reason this town exists." They all looked at her. "I think Grimm's Hollow was made for us. Like we're raised here, hidden, contained." "You think the whole town's in on it?" Bear asked. Electra nodded. "They're protecting us, or keeping us." "Like a zoo," Jet whispered. "Like a bloodline," Torben corrected. They sat in that attic, surrounded by broken photo frames and the smell of mildew and old secrets. No one cried. They were past crying. That night, Electra stood in the hallway outside her bedroom, watching her parents watch TV. Only they weren't blinking, they weren't moving. The TV flickered static, and they were smiling, too wide, too still, too sharp. She backed up slowly and noticed something she hadn't before. Claw marks in the paint, leading up the stairs, into her room. Electra didn't want to look, but she had to. She stood in front of the mirror. The pink moonlight poured through her window behind her, painting her skin in unnatural hues. She blinked, so did her reflection. Then she turned her head, but the reflection didn't follow. It smiled and whispered, "Happy early birthday." The fog didn't roll in that night. It swallowed the town whole. Grimm's Hollow disappeared beneath it, street by street, home by home, like a mouth closing around a final meal. Streetlights flickered and died. The moon overhead burned pink like an infected wound, casting an eerie glow that made the rooftops shimmer with wrongness. It was Halloween, and they all felt it in their bones. Something had changed. Electra sat on the edge of her bed, staring down at her hands. Her fingernails were darker, sharper. When she scratched her arm earlier, it didn't leave a mark. She could hear her parents downstairs, but not in the usual way. She could feel them. Their movement through the house sent a pulse through her skin like sonar, subtle but unmistakable. Her phone buzzed. A message from Bear. "Meet at the cornfield, 8 p.m., bring everything." Her chest tightened. She grabbed her flashlight, a silver pocket knife, and tucked the notebook from the library under her hoodie. Then she pressed her hand against her bedroom wall. It was warm, and it was breathing. The 5 of them gathered under the dying oak tree behind Bear's house. The fog licked at their ankles, thick and wet. Their faces were pale, eyes tired, every breath tight with dread. No one smiled, no one cracked a joke. They weren't just friends anymore. They were survivors. "Ready?" Bear asked quietly. No one answered. They just started walking. They called it the Hollow Maze. It wasn't supposed to be real, just a rumor passed around by kids too brave or too stupid to know better. But tonight, it was there. Rows of dead corn, blackened and brittle, rising into the fog like skeletal arms. It hadn't been there yesterday. The stalks were twisted. Some bled sap that looked suspiciously like blood. The wind didn't move through it, but something else did. The teens stood at the edge of the field. Then Bear stepped in first. They followed. The deeper they walked, the more unnatural it became. The rows changed behind them, closing off paths, twisting in on themselves. Sounds echoed through the fog, snarls, growls, footsteps that weren't theirs. Torben gripped a wooden stake he'd carved earlier that day. "This is a trap." Electra nodded. "But it's the only place they won't hide anymore. This is where they show themselves." Trix turned, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" Something was crawling through the corn, low to the ground, fast. Then a growl inches away. They froze. Figures emerged from the corn, not just their parents, but the whole town. Mrs. Dunn, the sweet baker, her mouth split wide open across her cheeks. Mr. Harlow, the pastor, skin hanging like wet cloth from his arms. And behind them, Electra's father, taller now, hunched, covered in hair, yellow teeth gleaming. "Children," he rasped, voice thick with something ancient. "You're ready." "We're not like you," Electra growled. "Oh, but you are," her mother purred, stepping forward. "You always were." "We raised you for this," said Jet's mom, who was now dragging a claw along the inside of her arm as though it didn't hurt. Bear stepped forward. "Then why lie? Why pretend?" "Because you had to choose," said Mr. Harlow. "You had to know what it meant to be human before you lost it." The cornfield began to tremble. The fog screamed. Behind the parents, something enormous stirred. A shape, a form with many mouths and glowing eyes. Something that looked like it had grown from the soil itself. The town's secret god, the heart of Grimm's Hollow. "We can't fight that," Trix breathed. "No," Electra said, "but we can run." The teens turned and tore through the maze. The corn slashed at their faces, snagged at their jackets, pulled at their skin, but they didn't stop. Behind them came the shrieks of monsters, fangs gnashing, claws raking wood, the pounding of something huge dragging itself forward. The exit appeared suddenly, a break in the corn, a flash of road. They didn't look back. They didn't dare. They collapsed on Bear's porch, heaving for breath. Blood stained their sleeves. Fog still swirled in the streets like a living thing, but for now, it was still. The town was quiet, too quiet. Trix broke the silence. What now? Electra stared up at the pink moon, her eyes glowing faintly in the light. "We survive," she said softly, "and we figure out how to stop it." Bear leaned back, his voice grim. "And if we can't?" Electra didn't answer, because in her chest something was stirring. Something hungry, something old. Something hers. The pink moon didn't leave, even after Halloween passed, even after the screams in the cornfield faded, even after the town pretended again that nothing had happened. The moon stayed. It hovered over Grimm's Hollow like an eye that refused to blink, and something inside the teens began to stir. The next morning, the fog was gone, but no one spoke about it. Neighbors waved as if nothing had happened. Mr. Harlow stood outside the church, smiling with his half-melted face. Children played hopscotch in the street, even though 2 of them had grown fangs. No one said a word about the cornfield. No one asked why Electra's front door had claw marks down it, or why Bear now flinched at sunlight. At lunch, Jet wore sunglasses, not because he thought it was cool, because his eyes had turned completely black that morning. No whites, no pupils, just solid void. He told them it didn't hurt. But when Electra touched his hand, it felt cold, like stone left outside in winter. "I don't feel hungry anymore," he whispered, "except when I pass people, I want to taste them." No one laughed, not even Trix. Torben hadn't spoken since the cornfield. When Bear finally cornered him that afternoon in the woods behind the school, Torben just stared at the trees. "I saw myself," he whispered. "In my dream, I had horns and wings, but they were rotting, and I was flying over town looking for something to eat." He looked at Bear, eyes wide. "And when I landed, it was you." It was happening to her too. She found it hard to cry now. The emotions came, but no tears. Her reflection blinked too late. Her sense of smell was too strong. She could tell who was lying, who was bleeding, who was afraid. She could hear her heart beating in her ears, and sometimes she heard other hearts too. Once, while walking home, she passed a woman on the sidewalk and smelled fear dripping off her like perfume. And Electra liked it. A flyer appeared in each of their mailboxes the next morning. Not mailed, not taped, just there. Town meeting tonight, 8 p.m. You're invited. You're ready. No location, no contact, just those words, and a faint imprint of the pink moon behind the letters. The paper smelled like sulfur. That night, they met at Bear's house again. No one wanted to be alone anymore. Trix paced, chewing her thumbnail until it bled black. We can't go to that meeting. What if we don't have a choice? Bear said. Torben was shaking. I can't sleep. I keep dreaming of the thing in the cornfield. The God. It's calling to me. I think it lives in us now. We're becoming them, Jet whispered. Worse, Electra said softly. We already were. Silence. Then, what do we do? Trix asked. No one had an answer, because the moon wasn't leaving, because the parents had stopped pretending, and because every one of them had felt something new that day. A craving, not for food, not for safety, but for power. Grimm's Hollow didn't have a town hall, at least not one anyone remembered, but at exactly 8 p.m., every street lamp flickered once, then twice, then went dark, and a low hum, like something ancient breathing underground, vibrated through the soles of the teens' feet. Then the fog came back, not from the sky, but from the ground. Bear found the entrance first. It was in the middle of the woods behind the cemetery, a rusted iron grate half swallowed by dirt, hidden beneath a rotten picnic table that hadn't been used since the 60s. It wasn't locked, just waiting. He pulled it open with a groan of metal and moss. A staircase spiraled downward into nothingness, cold air bleeding out from below like a whisper. The 5 of them stood at the edge. This is where they want us to go, Jet said. Then we go, Electra replied. The stairs felt infinite. The deeper they went, the more the air changed, wet, old, filled with the heavy scent of copper and smoke. Their flashlights flickered but never died, their beams bouncing off slick stone walls etched with symbols that seemed to shift when you looked away. Trix shivered. We're walking into a mausoleum. No, said Torben, we're walking into our birthplace. They didn't ask how he knew. They already knew it too. The staircase ended in a vast underground hall, wide, cathedral-like, with stone columns carved into the shape of watching eyes. The floor was uneven, cracked with old blood and moss, and in the center stood a raised altar made of bone and obsidian. Beneath it pulsed a living heart, huge, slow, wet, beating like a drum. Thum, thum, thum. On the walls were tapestries, stitched with hair and skin, depicting monstrous beings giving birth to human children. The teens stood in silence, staring. This was it, the truth. The town had been founded by monsters, creatures of hunger and shadow who learned to hide by birthing themselves into human forms, generation after generation, a bloodline that would ripen under the pink moon. They weren't made human, Electra whispered. They were always monsters, just sleeping inside us. Then the heart stopped, the chamber shook, and a voice crawled up from the cracks in the earth, wet, warm, familiar. Choose now, embrace what you are, or die in denial. A shape rose behind the altar, a massive being of shifting flesh and bone, all mouths and memories. Its face twisted into the form of each of their parents, one by one, smiling with teeth that didn't end. Join, it hissed, or be forgotten. Bear stepped forward. We didn't ask for this. You didn't have to, the thing whispered. You are this." Their bodies ached. Electra's vision pulsed with infrared. Jet's breath steamed in the cold, even though it wasn't cold anymore. Trix's hair writhed like it was alive. Bear's teeth ached with hunger. Torben's spine cracked when he moved too fast. They were changing, even without the choice. The thing in the altar was them, but so was the part of them that wanted to fight it. "Let it in," the voice groaned. "Let the mask fall." Jet dropped to his knees, trembling. "I'm not strong enough." "You are," Electra said. "We all are." They looked at one another, 5 teens, bound by blood, by horror, by friendship stronger than fate. No one spoke aloud, but they chose. They emerged from the tunnel as the fog lifted. The pink moon hung silent overhead. The town was still. The streetlights buzzed softly again. From the outside, nothing had changed, but deep down, the town knew. The teens had seen the truth, and they had survived it. But at what cost? It was November 1st. Grimm's Hollow looked normal again. The fog was gone. The sky was its usual pale gray. Pumpkins rotted silently on porches. Candy wrappers blew in the wind. Plastic skeletons returned to lifeless plastic. The pink moon had vanished from the sky, but none of them felt safe. The morning was still, too still. Electra sat at her kitchen table. Her parents moved around her, humming softly, frying eggs that neither of them would eat. Her mother offered her a plate. Her father kissed her on the top of her head. Everything looked perfect, except her father's smile was too wide. Except her mother's pupils shifted shape when she blinked, except for the scratches in the floorboards that hadn't been there yesterday. Electra didn't say anything. She just stared at her reflection in the spoon and watched as it smiled before she did. Bear stood in the school weight room watching his reflection in the mirror. His muscles ached, stretched, more than human. He didn't sweat anymore. Trix skipped school. She stayed home sketching twisted things with wings and fangs. When she blinked, she saw through the walls, saw her parents staring at her when they thought she wasn't looking. Torben dug into his backyard. He didn't know why, just knew something beneath the dirt was calling to him. Bones, maybe, or roots with teeth. Jet didn't sleep. He sat in the attic, staring out the window, waiting for the moon to return, and sometimes he thought he heard it whisper his name. They met after sunset, the 5 of them, same place, the edge of the woods. The wind was cold, the silence between them was loud. Electra looked around at her friends, pale skin, hollow eyes, the faint, unnatural flicker in the way they moved. They weren't the same anymore, and they all knew it. "No one remembers what happened," Trix said softly. "No one remembers Halloween." "They never do," Bear replied. "It resets every year." "But we remember," Jet said. "This time, we do." Torben's voice was almost a growl. "How long until we can't fight it?" Electra didn't answer right away. She was watching the moonless sky, feeling it. The itch beneath her skin, the burn behind her eyes, the sharp ache in her teeth. "What happens when we turn 18? Trix asked. Her voice cracked. Bear looked at Electra. Jet stared at the dirt. Torben's fists clenched. The silence stretched. Then Electra answered softly, "We become them." As they walked home, the camera lingers on the quiet streets, the flickering porch lights, the empty windows filled with watchers. No one speaks, no one smiles, but just before Electra reaches her front door, she turns, looks down at her hand. A second thumb is growing from her wrist. She shoves it into her sleeve and walks inside. The door closes, fade to black, a whisper, faint beneath the silence. "Happy birthday, Electra."